DNP, the podcast that started as me reading out a chapter of my own book and then criticizing that chapter, now resembles a fuck digital ASMR podcast. I have been cast out of my own podcast in an act that proves fiction is much greater a force than criticism. Unable to record my voice, text-to-speech is my only substitute in this audio field. It's a long story, you'll have to check out the previous podcasts for a catch-up. General notes. Such a shame. I had been on such good form. There's been a run of chapters that, granted, needed tightening or a bit of work, but were chapters that advanced the story, had surprises and some reversals in the story. Act 2 has largely consisted of chapters that loosely fitted a storytelling form that I had been following even without intending to. And then we get to this chapter, which has undone all of that. It had intentions. Possibly. It's a messy chapter. It's a messy chapter and it collapses in on itself, perhaps because it is trying to hold up what is now quite some story weight, but it really doesn't have the solid foundations to do so. I remember a long time ago, wanting this podcast to be a How Not to Write a Story podcast. I wanted to use XBook as a cautionary tale so that aspiring writers can see what can go wrong. So, let's go into all that. It is very late in the game to be introducing new characters, and I knew this. But introduce new characters I did. Granted, Yetjuk had made a bit of an appearance long ago and was named at that time, with Legort no doubt being his sidekick back then. They both reappeared in the previous chapter, re-establishing and continuing their power dynamic. In this chapter, they are having a spotlight shone on them once again. Does it matter their importance? They are here because the story needs them to be here now. They were absent when the story didn't need them. They are as two-dimensional as one could expect for characters who are only there for function, and poor comedic function at that. But what is their supposed importance? I wanted to represent chaos on the bridge, with everyone having different ideas of what was to be done on Earth. I wanted the unity of a collective goal taken away from this group of characters. I got this instead. There are micro and meta-narratives, where the micro-narrative should personalize what's going on overall in the larger scheme of things. This is too micro, to the point of being just a different narrative. William's concern has shifted away from what to do with Earth, even what to do about Ginger, and he is just trying to maintain order in his mind, as well as his crew. Needless to say that it's a confusing mess of unknown intentions, terrible backtracking, and different crew members interpreting what's going on differently. Yetjuk is the one who's interpreted what's happening the worst. Although equal punishment is applied to Legort, he seems less bothered, in fact later thinking that it only applies to Yetjuk and he claims his superiority over Yetjuk. Skanai doesn't seem to care at all, or he is just oblivious to everything. He's come up with an idea, and then takes his own initiative when he isn't given the command to do so. By focusing too much on their own individual goals, I have let slip the main goal of what needs to be done at such a crucial time. William should be focused on the invasion. His primary goal is how to get the Traskans onto Earth. Ginger's disappearance is a distraction. It foils his plans in both the sense that he is not focused on the invasion, but also William can't kidnap Ginger to have a bargaining chip when talking with the humans. Skanai tries to keep William on track, finding Ginger so that William can focus again on his primary goal. However, Yetjuk and Legort's inclusion here is a distraction from the distraction. It's an unnecessary third plot for William to deal with. It's an unnecessary third plot for the reader to deal with. Another idea that many subscribe to is that every chapter should be a contained story in and of itself. A story that is part of the larger story, of course, but should have its own beginning, middle and end. Taking it from this point of view, what's the story in this scene? William is clearly tense. William seems to be hitting his stride with the dark night of the soul, and the apparent defeat. Off the page, William has made the decision to pause the invasion, but this hasn't done much to reduce his tension despite his claims. He is then told of the news of Ginger's escape. This adds to his frustrations as this holds back his desire to ransom Ginger to the humans in order to get leverage. Yertjuk and Legault spin William off into a sadistic vision that he is unable to recover from. This results in apparently calling for the execution of the two guards. From the beginning of this chapter, William spirals downwards, and he was fairly unstable to begin with. There are no reversals in the story. There are no real opposite emotions, everything is just a continuation. William has moments of a power trip, but this is only in his mind. Again, there is no impact on the story or even the world around him, and William is quickly reset to where the chapter began. William is stuck in a story beat, and no matter how much plot I pour in, William is unable to move on. Plot is different to story. To give you a prime example, William has changed his mind about the invasion. This is important. This is a major reversal. Previously, William had been primed, manipulated, coerced into the invasion, but most importantly, he believed it was the right thing to do. We know how he got to that decision, that change of state in his emotions, his mind, his story. What we don't know is what brought him round to pausing the invasion. Sure, we are given an explanation. We are told, not shown. And that is not satisfactory. Especially as this change of mind is important. People change their minds. But there is no plot to explain this. We have nothing to attach to this new story stage. On the other hand, this chapter is almost entirely plot. A plot is the actions that push a character from one stage to the next in their story. Plot actions can be interchangeable, as long as the result of the actions achieves the desired intention of progressing the story. Lots of things happen in this chapter, but they do nothing to change William's state. I could have written almost anything here. Instead of building to executing two characters we know almost nothing about, I could have just had them play a game of football. I mean, why not? It's only plot, after all. I could still have had Yertjuk and Legault shouting at each other for playing badly. Alternatively, I could have had them be best buds. William could have won the game, he could have lost. If an execution is really that important, any result could have led to this step depending on where I position the characters. However, where would any of this have taken William to in terms of his emotional state and aim? New place in the story? This is what happens when the plot is left to do its own thing. It can be entertaining, it just doesn't change anything. Or an even better example.
Why are you now listening to my voice instead of text-to-speech? Me being back in my own podcast advances the story, as I have accomplished something. But what? It's frustrating, isn't it? What have I learned by doing this? What new state am I in? What part of the story have I now moved into? I can give you an explanation, but wouldn't you rather have experienced it with me? Story by itself is not enough. Plot alone doesn't do anything. That's why a narrative is a marriage of the two. The Psychologist's Chair.
The play that William is referring to at the beginning of this chapter is Cloud 9 by Carol Churchill. Although premiering in 1979, William had access to the playback in 1918. Alien technology, eh? I'd have been more direct about referencing it were it not the wrong time period, let alone performed in the wrong part of the universe. Cloud 9 is
all about deliberately miscasting people in the wrong roles based on gender, age, and race. So, why not miscast an alien
from the wrong time periods as a human? It's 2021 after all. Its inclusion here makes a nice blend between dreams, fantasy, fiction, imagination.
Emotions get intertwined as William blends these different realms together. Stresses that come from one
source are then combined with violence from another source. This sets up the pattern that this chapter attempts to follow. Thematically, things are getting confused. William is moving into Ginger's territory. This isn't the first dream that William has had. However, when he has had dreams previously, they have been very distinct, separate from his real world.
William's dreams help show an emotional state without it having impact the actual story. William does revert
back to the norm, talking about Trascan history and what he is to do with his population when he gets back to Earth, but this is short. The themes have been set up,
and they will pummel through this chapter. Where he gets really confused is with the introduction of Bateman. What was that all about? Is it enough to say that there is a plan? Can I get away with saying that there is a reason for this? Or have I lost your trust
by this point? In the play, William talks of his character having an affair. Can I tie this into the idea of playing with other people's trust? How, by changing his mind, he has betrayed those that he is supposed to love. The character that he plays is violent towards her children. Well, he attempts to execute 2 of the people under his protection as a leader. This same fictional character feels guilt. He watches the consequences of his actions, albeit in a non-real setting, and deeply regrets
where his impulses have led him. Look, I can only be honest and say that this was an over-ambitious chapter. It had too many ideas in it. I can look back now
and see my intentions for what I was trying to achieve. The main problem is that there was no overall goal. I failed in the fact that it didn't move anything on, at least for William. Surprisingly, in the very early drafts, there was a clear goal for this chapter, and it worked. I never actually took that away. I just shifted the goalposts, to the point where the players on the pitch have no idea where to aim. By muddying the waters, I have just achieved this opaque mess. I have achieved the storytelling goal of getting the reader to ask questions. But are they the right questions?
And will I be able to achieve the right payoff for those questions? And where am I? I've read ahead and I can't say that I like where the story goes. What I've learned is that distraction for the sake of distraction is not a good thing. That's what this podcast has become. An educational tool that is too absorbed in its own showing to effectively serve its own purpose. It's a bit unbearable, isn't it? I've learnt my lessons. I still have a battle ahead of me, but I've got my goal now.
So, what do we have to look forward to next time? Ginger has a wash. Until next time, TTFN.